begin.
Welcome, I am Brother Max. It is October 7th, 2025. We are a full week into the 31 Days of Fright horror movie project, Day 7, and Tusk is still going strong. But did you know Tusk has a sequel? It is Yoga Hosers. But before I dive deep into these two movies, because you do, and I'm going to because you need a drink to take care of this movie, and I'm just going ahead and take my shot right now. Oh man. Oh my god. Okay, I don't know what the next level is after sour for this, but it's there. I'll try to figure out a word for it. But whoo, man. Click subscribe, hit the bell, leave a like, leave a comment, and share. And what I just asked of you, please go do the same to Echo, Jim Fertochi, the 13th Wolfman, the Professor himself, Professor Macabro, and slew of others. And then you got the people who are just keeping the spooky season alive. You got Hobbs and Bones with live watch-alongs. And you got, I think, Nanette, she's doing one as well. Or at least she's just keeping the spooky season alive. Just go show them some much-needed love, please. They all deserve it, and then some. So, whew, man. All right. As I mentioned, Tusk has a sequel titled Yoga Hosers, because there's a scene in Tusk where Wallace he's on his way to interview Howard Howe after his interview with the Kill Bill Kid has failed because he died, and he's kind of bummed out, but he finds this kind of this wanted poster like, hey, I got stories to tell. And so like, that's perfect. So along the way, he stops at this convenience store called A to Z, which is heavily is the main setting for this particular movie, which I'll get to in a second. But it shows up in a brief appearance in Tusk, where you got Lily Rose Depp, which is the daughter of Johnny Depp, and Harley Quinn Smith, which is the daughter of Kevin Smith. They are the clerks in this movie. It's set in Canada. I don't think I've ever really mentioned that. But this movie takes place in Canada. Both of these movies. And he's just kind of like, hey, how do you get to Bifrost? And like, it's a boot. And, he's American, so they're kind of having like Canadian banter and stuff like that. Which I don't think I've ever mentioned as well. You got another really funny sequence in the movie where he's kind of crossing over into Canada, where he's talking to the TSA agent and they're talking about like, it's like Canada is red, white, and never blue, eh? And it's like it's just a really, really funny sequence. It's like very stereotypical Canadian American kind of conversation, but it's really, really funny. But that scene with the girls is very brief, but they come back with their own movie with Yoga Hosers, and they, even though a reference of Tusk in this movie, they call him like Mr. Mustache, I think, and they're famous because they were the last people to see him like as a human. Let's put it that way. And so this one, they are a band, and Adam Brody is their drummer, and he's heavily tatted up, and he throws a nice little fit and whatnot, and they're picking on him and everything. And so this movie, it is so tonally different than Tusk. It's not even funny. Like, where Tusk is more like Hellraiser, okay, and this is more like Evil Bong, okay. And I'm trying to like compare and contrast these movies, and that's probably the best way to put it, because this is in vein of the Full Moon Charles Band movies, because the main villain of this movie, like, I know there's a really cool monster at the end of the movie, just put it that way. You got these little Nazi Bratzies, they're all played by Kevin Smith, they are bratwurst Nazis, because there's a heavy Nazi theme in this movie, because people are going missing once again, and their body parts are being used to build this monster by this evil Nazi scientist, and who's played by Ralph Garman, and the two girls kind of start to what's it called? pick up on things because they're forced to work the night shift. They're not even supposed to be here today, that kind of thing. And because their dad is going out of town with like kind of like their evil stepmom, basically, and the stepmom convinces the dad's like they need to close the store and blah blah blah, and there's just a bunch of cool stuff that happens in the movie. It's like the power keeps going out, and it's like, why are we losing power or flickering and whatnot? Like everything makes sense in the end. Now, this movie will turn away a lot of people. Like, after watching Tusk and going to this one, like, what? And then there's supposed to be another one called Moose Jaws, which is part of the True North trilogy. And I cannot wait. Me and Professor Macabro, and I think Kaiju, Casey, we're all looking forward to Moose Jaws. And I think Hobbs and Bones as well. So we're all waiting impatiently for Moose Jaws to finally show up, and it's Jaws with a moose. That's all you need to know. But like I said, this movie is totally different. It's more comedic and everything. But the thing is, with the two actresses, they're not that bad. They really aren't. Like they're very serviceable, and I don't like this movie isn't meant to be like watched in black and white. It's not meant to be watched on mute like I've done in the past. This movie is just meant to have fun. I've talked about this movie as well, but I haven't really talked it in tandem with Tusk. And when you watch them back to back, it is like a little jarring. I'm not going to lie there, but it is fun when you see the references and nods to the previous movie here. And Justin Long shows up as well. He's constantly on the phone with like, I think Warner Brothers or something like that, because he's a yogi. So he's calling his yoga studio like Yogi Bear or something like that. It's like something Bearer or something. Just like, so he's on the phone with them, getting yelled at, or he's yelling at someone like about copyright infringement and stuff. It's really, really funny, and all his yoga poses are nerdy references like Yoga Fett and stuff like that, and it all comes back. It like there's like when you think it doesn't matter, it matters at the end, and that's why I will give this movie a pass, because if it was just in there to be in there, but like all their yoga poses come into play towards the end. And I do have to say, the true highlight of this movie is Ralph Garman, okay? When he is on screen, he is spectacular. I love listening to the Ralph Report podcast, where it's very interesting. If you don't know who Ralph Garman, he does a lot of voices and impressions, and he's a big, long-time collaborator with Kevin Smith, especially with the Hollywood Babylon podcast, which I recommend. But he used to do a radio show for out in LA, and he also does, like I mentioned, I think he does voices for Family Guy and American Dad and a bunch of other things. If you see him, you're like, oh, it's that guy, okay? Or his voice on Family Guy and the various shows, you will recognize him once, because he's usually doing the celebrity impressions, because that's what I'm about to get to. Is like there's a point in this movie where he's basically like, the girls have figured it out. Like they've kind of figured out like what's the cause of all, like why is there Nazi Bratzies running around and why people are going missing. Like they figured out the plot of the movie, okay? and there's a sequence with Ralph Garman where I'm not going to tell you who he plays, because I don't want to he plays a Nazi, but I don't want to give it too much away, because like I said in a previous day, you have to experience Tusk. You should also have to experience this, just because it's, like I mentioned, it's tonally different. So, and he's doing impressions, because these two young girls, okay, he's doing references to people like, who, what, but there's also characters that show up from Tusk as well that kind of show up late in the game, which is the private detective. Okay, I've been holding out for this. I've been trying not to mention who the private detective is throughout these first few days, or at least for a week. and so it gives people to kind of watch the movie and stuff like that. But the private detective that is in Tusk, and as well as in this, is played by Johnny Depp. Okay, he plays a little bit more serious in Tusk. He's a little bit more down the earth and grounded, I should say, not down the earth. He's definitely grounded. He's a little eccentric, but he's manageable. Where in this one, he's a little bit more like he's a little bit more over the top. But he there's a really cool people think it's a continuity error, but he has like moles and stuff on his face, and they're constantly like rearranging them, like making them different sizes, smaller, putting them like on the tip of his nose, on his brow, just wherever, and it's kind of funny. It really is. But there's a sequence in the movie where he's kind of talking to our villain in the movie is talking to the girls, and he's making references to stuff because that's the only way he has like learned English is by watching American television, like early like 60s, 70s, and like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, that kind of television, because it all makes sense in the movie, I promise. And so he's just doing like Adam West and Al Pacino, Schwarzenegger. He's doing a bunch of other people, like even like there's some other one I cannot think of his name, and it's a deep cut too. But then you got Johnny Depp's character, and he's just like he's Guy Lapointe. That's his name, Guy Lapointe. And he's like, I get that reference, you know, like you don't know who this is? Like he's like, it's pretty spot on. And so it's a really funny sequence with Johnny Depp, Ralph Garman, and the girls. But I'm laughing at it, and I'm like, if you know the references, it's funny. But yeah, watching these two movies back to back is pretty fun, and it was double feature today, and I haven't watched Yoga Hosers in a while, and so like there's some key fun points in the movie that I have not even touched on. Like there's a whole fight sequence between the girls and the Nazi Bratzies. They're Bratzies, so like they're like kind of filled with sauerkraut, and like I'm giving you the bare minimum. You have to experience this movie. So that's all I have to say about this. Now I have to do this a rating because this is a new movie for the month, and so I do have a rating scale. 1 being run-of-the-mill horror, 2 best watch of the group, 3 more than average but adds nothing new to the horror genre. Got 4 helps move the horror genre forward, and 5 being a horror classic. Now saying this is horror is pretty loosely, but it's definitely a 2. You definitely need to watch this with a group or under the influence, because this movie is a lot of fun to watch with friends or a nice stiff drink. So that is all I gotta say. I'm loving this. We are a full week into the 31 Days of Fright, through the spooky season, and I'm loving this, and I cannot wait for the rest of the month to do videos and stuff. I'm having a blast with all this, and I hope everyone else is too, and that they're staying safe and having a fun spooky season. And as well as the only way I can end these videos is by saying thank you.